In my opinion, Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc have been the biggest surprises in 2020. Now, of course, they drive for completely different teams and completely different cars, and arguably the trajectory of their two teams are kind of going in the opposite direction in terms of McLaren on the rise and Ferrari really having a horrible spell. However, as individuals, I think they have been exceptional and once again, arguably the surprise of the season, and that is what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. Now, guys, don't forget, if you do enjoy the content on my channel, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. But guys, let's get into this one. Now, I want to talk about these two drivers in isolation because they are in very different situations in 2020, despite being quite close in terms of the driver standings. When you look at Lando Norris at McLaren, everything is on the up. There's so much excitement and anticipation about what they could potentially do in the future. And then when you look at Ferrari, they are almost the polar opposite, a team in decline, a team that has had a horrible 2020, and that's actually been on decline for the past couple of years, and a team that is just hoping to get through the 2020 season and probably even 2021 for them to finally be competitive with the brand new rule changes. So yeah, definitely differing environments, but it does not take away from the fact that both of these two drivers, Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, in my opinion, have been absolutely stellar and really have been the big surprises in terms of what they've been able to achieve in their respective teams. So that's why I think it's only really fair to talk about these two drivers in isolation instead of trying to compare them. So the first person I'm going to talk about is Lando Norris. So after 5 races in 2020, Lando Norris finds himself 5th in the championship, right in between Alexander Albon in 6th and Charles Leclerc in 4th. And he has had a brilliant season start in 2020. And of course, he also had a pretty good rookie season as well. Now, I was not one of those people that thought he had a perfect rookie season. When you really break down the numbers, there were a few cracks in his game. But again, he was a rookie. No doubt that he had very good rule pace when he outqualified his much more experienced teammate Carlos Sainz in 2019. That was a very big surprise because really in Formula 2 up against Alexander Albon and George Russell, qualifying was never Lando's kind of strength, so it was really good to see him step his game up when he came into Formula 1. But on the Sunday, he was not the best Sunday driver. There was still quite a lot he needed to learn with regards to staying out of trouble, really just managing the tires and just racecraft in general because, you know, he kind of missed that killer edge on race day, and there's no doubt that he did get unlucky with a few reliability issues. But even having said that, he still finished at the end of the season 47 points behind his teammate Carlos Sainz. So again, you can give him 5, 10, 15 points back due to some of the reliability issues, but even so, that is still a very big gap, especially in the midfield. So maybe you can say he kind of a little bit underachieved with that really good McLaren last year, but nevertheless, he was 19 years old, and to me, he had a pretty decent rookie season. And just in general, I think it was the vibe that he brought to McLaren. We know that he's a bit of a social media character, but there's no doubt that he is a quality racing driver as well. So there's no doubt that expectations were high going into 2020, and I was sure that he was going to improve because, of course, you know, another year in Formula 1, getting even more comfortable with the team. However, I did not expect him to have the 2020 season that he is having, and that is why, to me, he was easily one of the most surprising drivers of 2020 so far. Now, when we look at Lando Norris in 2020, obviously there was a lot of things going on in the background, minus the whole pandemic, because of course every single driver had to go through that and that really long extended break. There was obviously Carlos Sainz leaving McLaren to go to Ferrari, then Daniel Ricciardo being announced as his replacement to McLaren for 2021. So I think there was no doubt that there was a little bit of pressure on his very young shoulders to be the guy that almost kind of brings a bit of stability to the team, with a driver going out, a driver coming in, and a driver coming in, by the way, that is going to be very competitive and very hungry to dominate in that team, because as smiley as Daniel Ricciardo is, he wants to beat Lando Norris and he wants to become a world champion. So there's going to be a lot of competitiveness in that team, and Lando needed to kind of almost soak up the pressure this year and kind of carry them over into next year as well. And when, of course, they'll get Mercedes engines and hopefully they become even more competitive. So for sure there was pressure going into the season, but I think I expected him to raise his game and get better, but not like he has. I mean, first of all, mentally, I think he's took a really big jump up. We all know that Lando Norris is the funny guy, he's the fans' favorite, he's the social media star, Twitch streamer, all the rest of it, but at the end of the day, we can never question his mentality and his commitment inside of the car, because that is when he is fully focused. All of the social media pressure, I feel like he really soaks it up really well, and he has just took it to a whole new level in 2020. He has done a fantastic job, and I feel like he's raised his game the most on a Sunday where he needed it the most, because like I said, you know, in 2019 he had the raw pace, he had the qualifying pace, but it was on the Sunday, and this year we've seen some amazing time management, amazing management during the race, just under pressure, doing the best job he can, really troubling his teammate Carlos Sainz and even getting a few team orders involved. But we know that the management over at McLaren is A1, so they really dealt with it really well. But again, he's become better at overtaking as well. I mean, the whole last lap Lando scenario 7 that led him, of course, to his first ever career podium, he has just really almost brought that aggression level into his driving style, and I think that has been amazing to see, and it's been really exciting as well to see. And as I mentioned earlier, he was missing that killer edge in 2019, but certainly in 2020 he has just once again brought that into his game and really just made himself as a driver be a lot more complete, which is, well, it's showed dividends in his results. I think something else that's been really impressive by Lando Norris is the pressure that he's put on Carlos Sainz, because there's no doubt that going into this season, in terms of when it actually started a few months ago, all of the attention was on Carlos Sainz, that big move to Ferrari for next year, the amazing 2019 season that he did have, and I definitely feel like all of that pressure and expectation for Carlos to continue to lead McLaren and be almost the #1 driver and have Lando Norris as the 20-year-old now, still kind of learning off him in terms of what he can do in the future. And Lando just completely flipped the script, and I feel like really getting that early podium in the first race of the season, it was almost like a massive monkey off his shoulder, because of course Carlos was the guy in 2019 who got that amazing podium in Brazil. We always knew that Lando Norris was capable of it. We've seen it throughout his junior formula, and we saw that he had raw pace in qualifying, so it was just about getting everything together, and yeah, he definitely did that at the start of the season. And again, it's just been almost riding that wave of positivity. However, I do also really quickly want to say that Carlos Sainz has not been as bad as a lot of people are saying. I feel like he's been definitely unlucky, especially in the past couple of races at Silverstone. In the first race, the British Grand Prix, he had a tyre failure, and even in the previous race, he had a really slow pit stop, which heavily compromised him, and in both of those races, he was running ahead of his teammate. So yeah, I definitely think that Carlos Sainz and where he is at the moment in the standings do not represent how well he's actually driving, but it's still Lando who has to grab the opportunity with both hands, and mentally, he is just raising this team to new heights, because even in qualifying, when he qualified in 10th, he was really frustrated with that, because he knows that if McLaren really do want to be race winners and champions in the future, it can't just be celebrated for them to get into Q3. They need to be fighting for those best of the rest positions now, but then trying to really kind of challenge Mercedes and Red Bull in the coming years. So he's just mentally raising the team as a whole to try and get them up to that par with Red Bull and Mercedes, and also he's becoming a leader even at the age of 20, because he knows when Ricciardo will come into the team, Ricciardo is no joke. He is a proven driver, and he will be very hard to handle. So he's rallying the team around him so that they have confidence in him, and then he has full confidence in them and the car. But nevertheless, he has been an amazing driver so far in 2020. Again, one of the biggest surprises in my opinion in terms of how big of a jump up he has taken from 2019 to 2020. And yeah, he just needs to keep doing what he is doing, because I and many other people are absolutely loving it. So now let's talk about Charles Leclerc. Now, in my opinion, his results and his championship standings just don't tell anywhere near the story of how much he has improved from 2019 to 2020. Now, in terms of the driver standings, he is currently 4th in between Valtteri Bottas and Lando Norris. And to be honest, whichever way you look at it, that is not too bad, especially when you consider the car that he is driving. In terms of his best result, he had a 2nd place finish in the first race of the season in Austria. However, looking at where he is compared to last year, obviously he and Ferrari will be frustrated with the lack of progress, and even the fact that they've actually got slower over the course of 1 year, which is just ridiculous. However, taking the car into consideration and the fact that Ferrari are just in complete limbo, Leclerc has really stepped his game up in my opinion, maybe even more so off the track than he has on the track, to the point where he is basically the unquestionable #1 at the team, and the driver that Ferrari are relying on every single race to get the absolute maximum out of that car, both in qualifying and in the races as well. And so far he has definitely been delivering, to the point where he's almost embarrassing his 4-time world champion teammate Sebastian Vettel, who hasn't been able to adapt to driving this tricky car in 2020. Now, in terms of the Sebastian Vettel side, I'm not going to get into that because it's something that I'm going to want to go into a lot more detail in the future. But in terms of Leclerc, why has he impressed me so much? Well, the #1 thing I want to say right off the bat is no, he has not been perfect. He has made mistakes. In the 2nd race of the season, he made a very stupid mistake and crashed his teammate off and really compromised the team as a whole. So yeah, it's definitely not been perfect. However, I've been really impressed with Charles Leclerc in the way that he has grabbed that team grabbed the bull by the horns or maybe the stallion by the neck in the case of Ferrari and really made it his own. He has stamped out his authority at that team, and with that package and the team he has around him, once again, he's really making Sebastian Vettel, a four-time world champion, one of the greatest of all time, look like an amateur. And that's what's been most impressive, because as much as you want to put a lot of blame on Charles Leclerc with regards to why Ferrari are maybe not doing so well, I feel like as a talent, he has just gained so much more experience. He is not making as many mistakes. Yes, he did have that one crash with Sebastian Vettel, which was a big mistake on his part, but mentally, he is taking over that team. He is now the de facto number one, and I'm getting very heavy Alonso and Schumacher vibes, which is absolutely what needs to happen if he wants to win championships with that team in the future. Now, whether you want to say that that creates a toxic environment at Ferrari, maybe it does, but for Charles Leclerc, that is exactly what he needs, because at Ferrari, I just don't think you can have two drivers with equal status. You need to have a number one and a number two, and if he stamps out his authority now and becomes the absolute outright leader, the guy that Ferrari can depend on race after race to deliver absolutely everything with the car that he is given, when Carlos Sainz gets there, he is going to have to take the role of the number two driver, because Charles Leclerc would just be on a different level with regards to the team and the coherency that he can have around the team and what that means for the results on the track. So in terms of his performances in 2020, again, it's really just been so low-key. Most of the time when the races finish, I barely even notice that he's there, and that's a good thing, because in that Ferrari, you're not going to be able to pull off any flash overtakes on the Red Bulls or the Mercedes, but you can qualify consistently like he has, and you can also just do a really nice and clean race, even though, of course, we know the Ferrari strategy isn't exactly always the greatest, but he's just doing the maximum that he can with the package that he is given, and it's very Alonso-esque. You know, whilst you have Sebastian Vettel, who's underperforming with the package that he is being given, Charles Leclerc seems to be doing the absolute maximum that he has out of his capabilities. And again, it's not so much the on-track that's been impressing me the most, it's the way he's been dominating that team ever since really he came in 2019, let's be honest, to the point where now Sebastian Vettel is really being ousted from the team by Charles Leclerc and by his amazing performances. And I think that is just so important, because in Ferrari, like Michael Schumacher did, like Fernando Alonso did, you need to assert your authority, you need to be the dominant driver, you need to be not just the dominant driver, but the dominant voice within the team and drive the management and drive the strategy yourself. And I feel like Charles Leclerc has just raised his game so much more from last year, and that is why I think he's been one of the biggest surprises in 2020. No doubt that the car is nowhere near where it needs to be, no doubt that Ferrari as a whole have been disappointing, but Charles Leclerc himself has took his game up to a whole nother level, his leadership to a whole nother level. He's motivating the team around him, as kind of a lot of people were very upset that he was celebrating a P4 finish in the previous race, but he needs to have some positivity. This team is going through so much negativity right now with so much pressure on their shoulders, and Charles Leclerc has just took it upon himself on his very young shoulders to raise the team and try to raise the morale, and I think that is a very, very important thing to do. So again, it's not so much the on-track, because I know that Charles Leclerc can race, I know that he is a quick racing driver and he can be very consistent, and he is a great qualifier as well, but it's the off-track, it's the way he has asserted himself into that team as the outright number one, and I've no doubt that when they will get everything together and will give him a car that will be good enough to challenge for a championship, he is going to be a real contender in the future. Well guys, there you go. That is my two biggest surprises in 2020. Now, I must say really quickly, just before I do end the video, that Pierre Gasly definitely deserves to be on this list. However, I'm going to talk about him in a later video, but I just don't want to underestimate just how good of a job he is doing in that AlphaTauri, and how he is really giving Helmut Marko a really big problem with the amazing performances that he's put in so far in 2020. So don't worry, I will be talking about Pierre very, very soon. Anyway, let me know what you thought of the video, guys, in the comments below, and also let me know your biggest surprises of 2020 in the comments below as well. Now guys, if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button to support the channel, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. And guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.